Hi, Shannon here with Therapy by Shannon, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the control that you have in your life in regards to what happened next, a little bit about expectations, and of course how to bring awareness and some other things to these parts of our lives that maybe cause some friction. So it's really not uncommon for people to talk about their families, whether it be in counseling or just in general, finding them saying phrases like, my siblings did this, or our family was the one who did this. My mom always wanted me to do this. We kind of hear these things inside of our head, or we say them out loud quite often. Most of the time behind these phrases is usually a very subtle or very clear expectation set by that household or that society that we were surrounded with at that time. And really, no matter what type of family that you grew up in, we all have expectations that are set for us. Kind of things that we are born into, that are kind of we auto-subscribe to, and then things that we come to over time that we get subscribed to. And I'd say it really just depends on your household, but sometimes we have a lot of those expectations and sometimes we have very few expectations set for us. Some, again, are very clear, some are very explicitly stated, and others you've kind of got to piece together and read between the lines and are digesting just by observing or watching what's being modeled or not being modeled for you. Either way, if we make it to adulthood, we often find ourselves kind of in a space of differentiation from our family systems or our societal expectations, and that often causes some friction within our current space and maybe the ways we interact internally with our thoughts and our feelings and sensations, and definitely how we interact externally with those that we are in relationship with. And of course, every day as we age and we get older, we hope that we can kind of embrace our individuality a little bit more and become our own beings outside of our family system or outside of the expectations or societal space that we grew up in. But this is not always so black and white, and a lot of the friction comes from us upholding these family beliefs consciously, but oftentimes unconsciously, or these expectations that are set for ourselves. And those may be drastically different than what we want for ourselves in very large or very subtle ways. So that friction comes from us trying to live a life that feels authentic to us, but still having some of these expectations, up front or kind of behind the scenes inside of us. And that's kind of what's causing friction. So kind of, for example, so if we're thinking about going to therapy, for example, and sharing with a professional our lived experiences, but your whole life you were told that sharing your feelings is very unsafe, talking with other people can be very dangerous and unsafe, and that's not anyone else's business but yourself, and that this information stays in the family, you going to see a therapist is going to cause friction. Because even though there are parts of us that want to go to therapy and want that healing and want that support, there are other parts of us who do not think it's safe, who do not think it's smart, and who are not comfortable with it. So that friction internally is getting caused. Another thing is kind of like feeling like you're going to cry, but you hold it in because you were told explicitly or maybe implicitly that emotions equal weakness. So knowing on one level that crying doesn't equal weakness, but still having those spaces inside of you where it does feel like weakness causes that friction, because we know one thing, maybe logically, that we can cry and not be weak, but on the other side, we don't have a way that allows us to do it in a way that we feel safe, because we've been kind of trained or modeled or molded in a way that crying does not feel safe. And maybe another example would be like coming to or like shifting your political beliefs from some other different space that you were socialized or raised, and maybe like still keeping them a secret from specific people out of fear of maybe like alienation or judgment from them. So we just see those kind of polarizations and those splits that like internally we may feel something and externally we may be showing up as something different, not allowing those expectations or those spaces to live on the same plane. They're kind of polar opposites than each other. So some of the most important things and working with these polarizations and these expectations that we have of ourselves and the friction that sometimes arises between them is definitely having awareness of them. If we don't have awareness of them, we're not really going to be able to do anything with them. And kind of giving back what doesn't resonate with us any longer. Again, sometimes we have things inside of us or we believe certain things that we're kind of like auto-subscribed to just because we were born and identify as a female or as white or as someone who dresses more feminine or whatever it may be. And a lot of our family and societal expectations that are placed on us are really done so without our consent. So they're just kind of like floating in our homes and our communities, waiting to land on us, and they often stick to us without us even knowing. So therefore, making it hard to really understand them. So bringing that awareness to these things. So what we can do inside, meaning inside our heads and our bodies, is kind of like seeing who's in the room, like who's in your head, who's in your body. We don't usually just have like one thing, one thought, one feeling, one sensation that comes online inside of us. There's usually a part of us that feels excited, another part of us that feels hesitant, something else that feels like it needs to plan what to do if things don't go as planned, another thing who is ready to self-sabotage all of this if it doesn't go to plan, whatever it may be. There's usually different things that kind of pop up. Usually inside, this looks like different thoughts. Maybe we feel a tension in our stomach or tingling in our hands. Like all of these different body sensations are all different signals of parts inside of us that we can listen to. So we want to be able to connect to the body when having a thought or feeling. Sometimes it can be connected to a body sensation as well. So exploring and bringing your awareness inside and seeing what's going on in your body. Maybe when you're feeling nervous, noticing if there's something going on in your body physically that's connecting to that nervous thought or that nervous energy. Maybe your heart's pounding or your chest is tight or your hands are getting sweaty. And then we really want to track these things and see how we feel towards them. There are certain things that come up in our body and our mind that we really like and we want to keep around a lot. And there are certain things that happen in our bodies and our minds that we do not like, that we do not want to be associated with, and that we want to kind of stop happening. So usually the things inside of us have a sequence to them. So see if you notice any internal patterns. Maybe you are feeling really anxious and you have a lot of chatter going on in your head. And soon after, there comes this thing that wants to like shut it all down, and we find ourselves like on the couch watching Netflix for 8 hours or something like that. Because that's the thing that our bodies have learned to shut it down. We don't want the chatter. The chatter is uncomfortable. What can we do to shut it down? Our bodies learn quickly that maybe watching Netflix for 8 hours does that. But that's not usually where it ends. Then usually we have something that comes online that maybe calls us lazy, and our doer energy comes online and maybe like tells us we should have been doing something different with our time. So just kind of noticing those patterns and those sequences of how things are happening in your body, and just notice how you may feel different towards each part when you do notice that it's showing up for you. Because the thing that keeps us on the couch watching Netflix for 8 hours isn't doing it because it just wants to like mess up our day and make us feel like we're lazy. It's doing it because it doesn't want the chatter going on in the head. So what can we do with the chatter? How can we help the chatter? learning these sequences can help us kind of track and see like, okay, there's some things going on. Maybe there's an expectation that having chatter means we're crazy. Going to all these places will kind of make a spider web approach as to what to do with these things, but it can just be really helpful in bringing that awareness to these things, of being able to see these expectations and where there's some friction and where there's some differences. And then we definitely want to like reorganize a little bit. So as mentioned before, like we want to have some choice. We don't always subscribe to these beliefs that we hold inside of us. So like little boys don't like click subscribe to feeling weak when feeling and experiencing certain emotions. These are unfortunately just things that are kind of built into our society and our lives, and we are intentionally we're just kind of like subscribed to them and our families and our surroundings. So maybe we were told by people like grow up, or crying is for girls, or get over it, or you don't have to cry about that, just wipe those tears away. Or maybe even subtly we were kind of giving these messages to young boys by like never seeing their father or other men in their lives cry, or only seeing females in movies express emotions in that way, seeing more females in caregiving professions than men. So being able to understand that like a lot of these things are not our choice, and that we can learn about them, usually internally, sometimes externally, and really being able to be like, okay, wait, was this my choice to have this kind of expectation and belief inside? And is this something I want to still withhold and keep in that way? Or do we want to be able to give it back to society, or give it back to our families, or whoever kind of auto-subscribed us to that? So now that you are an adult, some things definitely have changed in your life and the way you navigate things. So maybe you don't have the same political beliefs as the system you grew up in, or you took a different lifestyle route than the one that was kind of set out for you. Possibly you're attracted to the same sex when you grew up, knowing that was not an option kind of in your community or in your family. So this is where it all comes together, that we have got to bring that awareness to what's going on and how things were different before, and how these things are kind of stored in the body and who they belong to, so we can give them back. So if we do have this belief from our community or whatever it may be, that we can't live our life this way, but as an adult, we really feel like we want to live our life this way, we've got to be able to work with those two things and possibly give back some of those beliefs to family or to society that we don't want to carry anymore, because maybe they're really heavy and maybe they just don't match with our current life choices and how we want to live our life anymore. So understanding that a lot of this friction that's caused inside of us is super normal. Everyone's got it, usually around different topics, because we're all raised in very different families and very different communities, and all sorts of things going on in there. But there are ways to help and heal these things. So making sure that you're kind of slowing down to kind of speed up. So we want to like slow down the process, get to know, again, who's in the room, bring awareness to what's going on inside of our bodies, to really see, is this a belief that I want to hold on to, or an expectation that I really want to have for myself? Or is this something that I can give back? And it doesn't mean we have to actually have those conversations with community members or with our family members. It can be a process that you do with you and your therapist, or you and your meditation practice. It can be an internal practice. It doesn't mean we have to like go confront our, church leaders and our community leaders and our parents and say like, we don't believe this anymore. I mean, you can if that's what floats your boat, but it doesn't have to be done that way. So, but that's kind of it for now. If you have any questions about expectations or anything in regards to what I just talked about, just let me know. If you want to learn more about me or my practice, you can do so at therapybyshannon.com. And if you want to work with me, just reach out and we can get you scheduled with a free consult. Okay, bye.